Hello and welcome to another episode of Consensus with Canonizer. My name is Jim Bennett, and I am here as always with the Canonizer Council. We have Brent Allsop. Brent, how are you?
Good.
And we have Kelly Casaday. Kelly, how are you? Then I assume that's good. Is that a gang sign? I'm not quite sure how that all works. In Great Britain, this is not a good thing to do, just so you know. Maybe that's okay. All right. Are we gonna have just hand gestures from you, Kelly, today, or are we gonna get some verbal response? Oh, Kelly,
Mhm.
you're muted.
Oh, it depends. We're gonna have to see how it goes.
All right. Well, and then we have 2 anonymous not experts. Not an expert number 1. Sound off. How are you?
I'm doing great. Don't trust a word that not an expert two says. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Oh, is that what it is? Not an expert 2. Can we trust a word that you say any word you say?
Yes, you can trust.
All right. We will see what we can. So, we are gonna talk about 2 different topics today, and Kelly, I'm gonna pull up your screen here. Um,
Nice.
and the first one here, if we wanna go back to that last one on the there it is, MAGA, greatness or fear-mongering? What are your thoughts about "Make America Great Again"? So this is a slogan that obviously Donald Trump has embraced since he first ran for president. It is not a slogan that is unique to Donald Trump. Ronald Reagan used the phrase "Make America Great Again" a number of different times, but Donald Trump has sort of co-opted to the point where I think it's inextricably linked to him. Brent, this is your topic. Can you launch the discussion here as to what your thoughts are here?
Yeah, if you go into it feels like false and that pretty the summary or the title, it feels like false and faithless fear-mongering to us because America has always been getting better and it's a fact that every measurable standard showing growth over the long term for both America and the world, and yeah. So to me, just the whole anyone who would have respect for the Make America just destroys their reputation in my mind.
Anyone who has respect for "Make America Great Again" as a Trump slogan? Or I mean, are you anti-American greatness?
No, no, well, I think, um, I think just in general, focusing on America only or America first is, like, hateful for the whole rest of the world. Like, everyone puts out a United States flag, but that kinda makes me feel uncomfortable, and I wanna put out a United Nations the whole world. It's like I don't like the US and hate everyone else because if you're saying you like the USA, you're exclusive and saying that we're better than everyone else, but and it seems like to me, so many MAGA people, and they wanna, make America great or have America first to the expense of the whole rest of the world, and yeah, that just, makes me feel real uncomfortable. That's one of the most difficult things about the MAGA movement for me is just the whole idea of American exclusivity and who care and damn the rest of the world, we're gonna take everything we can get kind of an attitude.
Well, so there are a lot of ways to process this, because I mean, when I ask you the question, "Are you anti-American greatness?" I don't know of anybody that would answer no, that would say, "No, I want
Right.
America to be great."
Right.
But I think the whole thing hinges on how you define great, because when I think of a great America, I am not thinking necessarily of a powerful America. I'm not thinking that what makes us great is that we can beat up anybody else in the world,
Absolutely.
which seems to be, I think, the way the MAGA movement uses this term. When they talk about American greatness, they're talking about America's dominance militarily, America's dominance economically, and that greatness is defined by just how big a stick you have. And, this was Teddy Roosevelt, "I speak softly, but I carry a big stick." The I see the greatness of America as being the goodness of America, the decency of America. And when I look at times when we have been great and when we have not been great, I look at essentially the moral failings and successes of the United States. I think that Abraham Lincoln made America great by getting rid of slavery. I think that we were great during World War II, partly because of our military might and the strength that we had. But I think mainly because we were on the side of decency and goodness, that we were fighting a clearly evil enemy in a war where decency and goodness and democracy were at stake. And so making America great again to me is not necessarily beefing up all of the things that Donald Trump finds impressive, but rather, I think, Brent, to some degree, embracing what you're talking about in that America is great because it is good, and making America great in the eyes of the rest of the world, I think, is in establishing the kind of democratic institutions and the rule of law and all of the things that, in my estimation, Donald Trump has done nothing but undermine since really since 2016, since he first took office. And when he left office the first time, uh, massively undermined American greatness by trying to overthrow the result of a free and fair election. And now, newly in office, he's ignoring. We talked about this in a heated discussion last week, but or I think it was either last week or 2 weeks ago. Uh, Ignoring judicial kinds of checks on his power. One of the most recent being um, the decision by a lower court to uh, reverse the Trump tariffs, which I got very excited about, given that tariffs are supposed to be passed by Congress and that Trump is misappropriating a law talking about national emergencies to establish the tariffs. Court said, "Oh gosh, you don't have the power to do that, Donald Trump. There isn't a national emergency that justifies that according to this legislation. Right now, it's on hold. The tariffs are back in place for a while. I am hopeful that the courts will continue to check Donald Trump's authoritarian instincts. But to me, that is the threat to American greatness. The threat to American greatness um, is not the fact that China might have a bigger economy than we have, or that somebody's going to have more nuclear weapons than we have. I think the threat to American greatness is that we will no longer set the example for the rest of the world for constitutional governance. I mean, I think there was a term that was often used prior to Donald Trump, not necessarily make America great again, but this idea of American exceptionalism. The fact that America is so good in terms of its democratic institutions, that it's an exceptional leader and a model for the rest of the world. And I think we've lost a great deal of that very quickly. So uh, I don't think it's necessarily false and faithless fear mongering, as this topic describes, so much as it is a misunderstanding of what genuine greatness is. So I think that I may end up going in and creating my own camp that reflects that point of view, that I think that making America great again requires us to define what it means to be great and then to live up to those standards. So that's my rant on this. Kelly, I'm very interested to hear where you are because I think you're the most sympathetic to Donald Trump's use of greatness than anybody else on the panel.
Yeah, I'm taking a different um tact entirely. I think MAGA is a decent contribution to memorable American political slogans. I went through and made a list of some good slogans and some horrible slogans, and I highlighted the ones I thought were the best. Um, Tippecanoe and Tyler too. It's memorable. It talks about warmongering with um, William Henry Harrison's um, military victory in Tippecanoe, and then it talks about his vice presidential candidate. Don't swap horses midstream. It was Abraham Lincoln's um, slogan during the Civil War, and then that was co-opted again by Franklin Delano Roosevelt 100 years later. War in Europe, Peace in America. That was a good one by Woodrow Wilson. A chicken in every pot, a car in every garage, Herbert Hoover. Happy days are here again, Franklin Roosevelt. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? It's morning in America. It's the economy, stupid. Change we can believe in, hope. And the one I put in of a losing candidate was Feel the Burn, which I thought was just a fantastic slogan. But all of these good slogans talk about America needs to improve in some way. With the exception of I Like Ike, that was just fun. But Harry Truman.
Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Wasn't there some kind of massacre at Tippecanoe?
Well, that was Harrison's battle he fought. So history is always full of gray things.
Well, it's written by the winners. And I think it's significant that William Henry Harrison died 30 days after his inauguration.
Sure.
So,
But like if we're comparing Make America Great Again, I have it here as a good one, but not the best one. Like Give 'em Hell, Harry. That was a fantastic slogan. That means that, to me, something's going to change. We've got a fighter in the White House. He's going to go and mix things up, going to do something different. Obama's Yes We Can, and another one that's not listed is just Hope and Change. It means that something's wrong now. I'm going to make it better. But I want to go through some of the really bad ones. Then I want to go through some of the ones that I think were just hilarious for a couple other reasons. But let's make it a Landon slide for Alf Landon. Horrible. It had no hope. It wasn't memorable. They were trying to do something that didn't work. Madly for Adley, trying to keep up with I Like Ike.
Adlai, so it had to be Mad Lie for Adlai.
Yeah, I was it.
Adlai.
Yeah, but then that's the same thing. Adlai and Estes, the besties. It doesn't work. Yeah, Barry Goldwater's. I think this is probably the worst political campaign slogan of all time. In your heart, you know he's right.
Johnson's counter to that was in your gut.
In your guts, you know he's nuts. Yep. Ross for Boss, awful. A better man for a better America. Bob Dole, this didn't work. I think Evan McMullen, you can argue he had the right thought, but the way it was put into words just doesn't roll off the tongue. It's never too late to do the right thing. Andrew Yang's Humanity First. The Green New Deal 2020, Howie Hawkins. For an eco-socialist, Green New Deal just rolls off the tongue. Asia for America, and Pete Buttigieg also, I think, is one of the worst of all times. Win the era! Win the era!
So you think Humanity First by Yang is a real bad one? To me, that's almost the best one up there.
Yeah, well, and I guess that's why some people vote differently. But from my advertising background, it doesn't give any hope. It doesn't do any change for the future. It's it's just weird to me. But my favorite ones,
the Make America Great and one of the biggest or just the American exclusivity and we're good and everyone else is bad. I want to counter to that, and to me, the best counter to that is I'm for humanity, not just America.
Yeah,
That's so important.
Yeah, and as you know, Andrew Yang lost, so I don't think as a political slogan that really resonates with American voters. But my favorite ones are the ones that are questionable, like From Atlanta Prison to the White House. 1920 Eugene Debs, who was um, put in jail. I think it was for the Alien and Sedition Act. I got to remember that. Make your wet dreams come true.
Oh,
Al Smith, 1928. He promised that he was going to overturn prohibition. And this was a Nixon slogan, Dick Nixon before he dicks you. Yeah. So America has a history of slogans. Some people like them, some people don't. The good ones offer some hope for the future and a direction forward. And I think Make America Great um, adds to that. Not as good as Morning in America or You're Better Off Than You Were 4 years ago, but it's not a horrible political slogan.
Well, so we're talking about two different things here, though. You're talking about the effectiveness of a slogan, and I think Brent and I are both talking about the content of the slogan. It's not necessarily that it's catchy or that it's effective. I'm also curious. Uh, I think the only thing that makes a lot of those slogans bad, I mean, some of them are genuinely bad. Madly for Adlai is genuinely bad, but I don't know that you would say those slogans were bad if they had won. I mean,
Yeah, and that's true. But again, the topic wasn't a deep dive into the deep dark secrets of MAGA. It was an article by Business Insider that talked about how Trump came up with the slogan "Make America Great Again," not some deep dark hidden meaning of it. So I think I'm on the topic. It's a decent political slogan.
well, do any of our non-experts want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I can share my thoughts. So basically, the first thing I just want to um, uh, tell is like it can have some negative effects because you are saying that you are not great and you are making it great. But again, that is considering that is like political slogan, right? So I mean, they made it to become a popular slogan, and that's why people are following it or maybe blindly following it. But again, in my thought, it should be not like that. So you are saying that your country like uh, USA is not great, and we will make it great. Or the previous president, they didn't work on it, and they don't have those kind of values to make America great, right? So I agree with what Brent said initially. So that's my thought.
Okay. What about our other not expert?
I mean, I'm going to have to agree with that sentiment, but it has to be placed in the context of the 2016 presidential campaign, where, uh, I mean, the slogan itself, the political campaign, really runs counter to the growing progressive movement, probably all the way back to the 1970s or 1960s, but really, I mean, and it also goes. It was also I'm having to remember now because it was also tied into the drain the swamp chants that here comes Donald Trump, who's a political outsider, a businessman, and we're going to make radical change. So he completely leaned into that fact, or that message rather, that what we have now is not working. Um, And when you talk about political slogans, it is really great. And it definitely went well with the re-election, Keep America Great, in theory. I don't think that that quite stuck, given that not much really changed in his first term, especially in comparison to the velocity of this term, where the Keep America Great would have actually worked.
Why would the Keep America Great have actually worked this term?
It,
Because Joe
No,
Biden.
so if that's just that's honestly just a note in comparison to the velocity of change between this term and last term, which I don't necessarily think is a good thing. It's really more of a byproduct of the fact that that competent and sane individuals uh, who were in check in the cabinet last time all of those people are gone, and it's just filled with yes men mostly and people who have their own political agendas.
Okay. Well, so I think what's happened here is probably a good thing with regard to how Canonizer works. Because what's happened here is that everybody has taken this topic and they've gone in different directions. And I mean, I think I am in agreement to some degree with Kelly with regard to if this is a topic about which slogans are best or most effective. I don't think there is a compelling argument that this is not an effective slogan. I think it's been a wildly effective slogan in ways that other slogans in history, I mean, as you go through that list that Kelly has there, so few of them, I think, if you were to say, um, I'm just looking at the one, if you were to say it's the economy, stupid, anybody who was alive in 1992 would probably remember that. But right now, it's not emblazoned in the cultural zeitgeist in the way that MAGA is, to the point where I think in 50 years, in 100 years, when you say "Make America Great Again," it will call up memories of Donald Trump. I mean, I think he has co-opted that so powerfully, in the same way, this may be an explosive comparison, but I don't mean it to be necessarily. In World War One, American fighter jets used a symbol known as the Gamodian Cross on their fighter planes, on those initial World War One bombers. It was a symbol that was considered a symbol of peace. It was hundreds of years old, and yet in World War II, the Nazi government adopted the Gamodian Cross, better known as a swastika, as its symbol. And now all of the previous usages of swastikas, the swastika was also a Japanese symbol of peace. My parents have this Japanese painting that have all these balloons and there are all these symbols on them, and on one of them is a swastika. And the painting was done before World War II, and the implication was supposed to be very different. Now there is no possible way that you can use that symbol without conjuring up images or ideas of Nazi Germany. And there is no, I think the phrase "Make America Great Again" is so potent in terms of its linkage to Trump that I don't think any other, I mean, you have in that list, Kelly, Ronald Reagan said in 1980, "Let's make America great again." But the reality is you can't say that phrase and expect people to think of Ronald Reagan anymore. It's so powerfully linked to Donald Trump. So I think you could make the case it is the most successful, most powerful um, political slogan of all time. Would you agree with that, Kelly?
Not yet. I think that's something history needs to do. Like in my life, it's Morning Again in America for my advertising life. I think it was the most successful at the time. Now is it as memorable now as it was then? No. I don't know if MAGA is going to be as memorable now 50 years from now as it is today.
Well, I mean, the red.
But let's look at this. A chicken in every pot, a car in every garage. Like that to me is memorable. That sticks. I had no idea it was Herbert Hoover, but I knew that was a great political slogan. The buck stops here. I didn't know was Harry Truman, but it's a great political slogan. So maybe in the future, MAGA will be considered a great political slogan. But yeah, I don't know. We're gonna have to wait for history to say if it's going to be linked to him or not. Maybe Donald Trump's going to go in the dustbin of history. Maybe he's going to be the William Harry Harrison of politics.
Well, but none of those, I mean, the slogan "Make America Great Again" exists independent of Donald Trump to some degree in a way that none of those other slogans do. I mean, the merchandise, the red hat, they're so ubiquitous, and you don't have to have Trump's name on it. Just the slogan itself conjures up Trump and Trumpism in a way that a lot of these other. The reason I know a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage is Herbert Hoover is because I was in the musical Annie, and there's a song called "We'd Like to Thank You, Herbert Hoover" that makes use of that slogan. So either you're a political buff or you're a musical theater buff.
And the same thing with "Happy Days Are Here Again."
That's
Like,
great.
a new great song. But I didn't
Of our clear again. Yeah.
I didn't know that it was connected with Franklin D. Roosevelt. I mean, now it makes sense, and I won't forget it. But I just knew it as a Depression era song.
Well, I mean, don't swap horses midstream, I think is kind of a stupid slogan. They make fun of it. Have you ever seen the movie Wag the Dog?
Uh-huh.
In the middle of that, you have a president that's running for reelection who is wildly unpopular, so they start a fake war in order to get the president excited because his campaign is bombing and his slogan is "Don't swap horses in midstream." And Dustin Hoffman is the publicist that is orchestrating the fake war, and he spends the entire movie just wringing his hands saying, "No wonder he's losing, he's got a terrible slogan." So, and there are two winners there that have don't swap horses in midstream" as their slogan. I would submit the slogan itself isn't very good, that Abraham Lincoln was compelling enough, and although I'm it wasn't a landslide.
Yeah, like I think that's the thing. History looks at Lincoln differently than the electorate did when he was running for reelection. Like he was not a popular guy.
Yeah. Well, Kelly, how do you feel about Brent's idea here that this is too exclusive? That this is saying we're better than everybody else, and the rest of the world can go to hell. Do
Um,
you agree that "Make America Great Again" has those implications?
I don't.
Yeah.
I like it to me. I can't get past it's a political electoral comment. And you can make the same comment that it's exclusive for almost every single successful presidential campaign in American history.
What's
It's
the other part of it? America first? Is that-
make America great. I can go back to that in a second, but let me go back and find them. But the bottom line is it's a slogan for Americans so that they will vote for a president of their country. And I bet you if a presidential candidate ever said, "Hi, I'm here to make Europe great and Japan and Asia great, and I'm willing to sacrifice America to do that," he will never or she will never be the president of the United States. Because we're not electing a president of the world, we're electing the president of the United States. It's not the Star Trek world, it's America world.
Humanity first, then, you don't think is gonna be a big winner?
Uh well, it hasn't been yet.
Yeah, humanity first full way. Yeah, that is good thing.
I mean, we have we could go and look at slogans from other countries too. I'm guessing that the president of Australia never said, "Hi, we're going to be subservient to America and the rest of the world," or like they're running to run their country, not the world.
Well, not an expert too,
Y-
I
Yes.
someone I'm not going to,
Yeah,
describe,
no worries. Yeah, go ahead.
but you're not an American citizen, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes. And I was coming to that. So last time in my country, so there was a slogan, like it was like "Together with everyone, development for everyone." Okay,
Mm.
and that was like wonderful slogan, which made people believe in the presidential candidate, right? And then they won. So something like that should be. Okay, like I'm with that slogan. So yeah, that's my perspective.
But when you hear "Make America Great Again," do you do Brent's implications hit you? Do you feel like, oh, this is America saying they're better than my country and that my country is not great? Do you hear that slogan?
It's not like that, but I somewhat hear dominance then.
Dominance.
Yeah.
America is trying to be dominant here.
Dominant. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I hear that too. I don't necessarily, but when I think of Ronald Reagan saying it has a different implication. But so it's
So
I don't hear that same kind of authoritarian.
so my thought will be like making any country great is not about the dominance. It should be for the humanity or the uh, it should be for everyone in that country. It doesn't matter it's citizen or it's non-citizen. So
Okay, well then to wrap up this discussion, I'm thinking there are elements of both Brent's camps and Kelly's camps that I quite like. But I think I want to make my own case, and I will do that before our next podcast, in a new camp that talks about the greatness of America is the goodness of America. And so I very much want to define, I'm happy to say make America great again, but I want to define greatness in a way that talks about goodness. And I'm less interested in its salience or power as a slogan as I am in the concept of what greatness is. Has anybody in the course of this discussion uh, seen a camp that they like here that they want to join, or have they been persuaded to switch camps?
It's very educational to hear Kelly's point of view. So yeah, that's something I hadn't considered.
But that's not it, but it hasn't persuaded you to switch.
Right. Yeah.
Either one of our not experts? How about you guys?
Got to pick a camp.
Pick a camp?
Gotta pick a side. Gotta pick a side.
Even if you create a third camp that I don't think this is worth my brain power to think about enough to join a camp. We should.
Well, I mean, Brent, I
something
think
that-
the default or I don't care is just not participating in a topic.
Right. So, well, all right. Well, then I think that we've covered this. This next topic is one that I wanted to raise. Kelly, can you bring that up on your screen?
Sure. Yep.
We go over there.
I think that, by the way, I think that we could explore all sorts of aspects of this, and I'd love to hear about political slogans in other countries and see, go through those. I think those are fascinating.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear about a political, development for all. It's fascinating to hear what resonates in other countries.
Like, okay, I was looking at one from India. I think it was 1967, and it was Prime Minister. I'm going to butcher Indian names, but Lal Bahadur Shastri, which translated into English is Joy Jawan Jai Kisan, is "Hail the soldier, hail the farmer."
yes, that was from my country.
So that just seems, like it's like that must have been very relevant to the time. I'm assuming there was something going on in India at that time, probably with some sort of conflicts with Pakistan, and so you need to take care of the military. But I'm also for the little guy. I just think that's fascinating. But anyway, Jim, here is your topic.
Yeah. So is the war in Ukraine worth fighting? The reason why I think this is a salient point right now is that we are just coming off of Ukraine launching a devastatingly effective attack against Russia and a highly unorthodox attack against Russia. Up until now, the Ukraine-Russian war was a fairly conventional one with tanks and soldiers and fighter planes and bombs and everything that we've seen in warfare since World War I, essentially, when we first got planes that were able to drop bombs on things.
Yeah, I think you can even go back further. I think like Russia was using tactics that would have been during America's War of Independence from Great Britain. They were just sending wave after wave of soldiers in to be mowed down.
Right.
Like this was it was insane.
Well, and when Donald Trump won the election, he said he was going to end the war in 24 hours. He had Zelensky in the Oval Office and dressed him down and told him he can't win without the United States. He offered a really punitive kind of thing to Ukraine and said, okay, give us all your rare earth minerals and all these other things, and then we'll help you win the war. And then negotiated a peace settlement that allowed Russia to keep all of the territory that it has seized in the course of a war of aggression. At one point, Donald Trump said that Ukraine started the war. I mean, so all of this just seemed very conventional, and given the size and scope of Russia and the lack of commitment from the American government after the Trump election, or at least the wavering commitment, it seemed fairly obvious that Ukraine was this was not a war worth fighting for Ukraine. They should settle for whatever scraps they can get, and they should just pack it up and let Russia win because Russia was on it. And then Ukraine flipped the whole thing on its head with Operation Spiderweb, which involved, I mean, it's just fascinating. And the fact that Zelensky has released all of the plans is just, to me, it's a master stroke because it's psychological warfare. It says, here, the fact is, Russia, you're not safe at all. Doesn't matter that you have all this firepower. The reality is, we have technology. We were able to infiltrate your government to the point where we got drones into your Air Force to knock out a third of your Air Force in this huge sweeping assault that didn't require massive amount of soldiers and massive amounts of manpower. It was tiny drones that were in trucks and shipping trucks. This is a new form of warfare using new technology. And all of a sudden, Ukraine looks like they can win this thing, even without the United States. Donald Trump was not informed about this until the rest of us were. He found out about it in the media the same way the rest of us did. Ukraine is saying we can win this war with or without the United States, and here's how we're going to do it. And to me, that all of a sudden says, okay, this is a war worth fighting on behalf of Ukraine, and it's a war that is essential to win. Because if we were to abandon this war, if we were to just say, okay, let's just let them fight it out. First of all, Ukraine may end up winning it anyway because that will unify Europe, and Europe all of a sudden says, oh, okay, we don't need the United States anymore. We can fight this war. We can help Ukraine. And all of a sudden, the balance of power shifts in a way that the United States, to some degree, is left out in the cold. And so going in and backing Ukraine in this war does a number of different things. One, it shows that democracy is still viable and still essential. It shows that authoritarians don't always win, that you don't have to back down when someone's bullying us. And it's, I think it's the most essential sort of war that has happened in order to define the future of democracy and the future of the United States in a way that no other war has. So I'm hearing somebody typing furiously. Are we getting a new camp?
Yeah, I'm creating a new camp. Sorry, I should have.
Even as we talk?
Yeah.
Brent, what is your response to this? What camp are you?
Yeah, I just created a new camp. Let me commit the change.
Kelly, can you bring that up?
Yep.
Is it camp already there?
Yeah.
No, thou shalt not kill.
Yeah, go ahead. It's a real short statement. You can go ahead and read that.
We'll just give one example of how Mahatma Gandhi liberated India from England peacefully. If you use a tool like Canonizer to find out concisely and quantitatively that 90% of Ukrainians didn't want to be a part of Russia, that should be the end of it, and no leadership should ever be able to override the true will of the people. Oh, okay, I want to push back on that just a little bit. Mahatma Gandhi liberated India from England peacefully. And I remember having a conversation with my father after watching the movie Gandhi with Ben Kingsley as Gandhi. And I essentially made that argument to him as I said, look, Gandhi shows that you don't need a military. You don't need to fight. And he said, yeah, but what would have happened, and this is back when Russia was the Soviet Union, what would have happened if Gandhi had tried to liberate India from the Soviet Union in the same way? And his answer was Gandhi would have been executed instantly and disappeared. And the reason
And he would have become a martyr, and Jesus, that's what Jesus Christ was.
Well,
and that would have ended the whole thing.
But the martyrdom of Jesus Christ didn't end the Roman Empire. The fact is, Great Britain was operating with a different set of moral standards than the Soviet Union would have. If Gandhi had done the same thing to try to liberate India from Nazi Germany, John Lennon was confronted with this, when he said, "Give peace a chance," and just war is over. They said, "Well, how would that have worked in World War II?" And his response was something along the lines of, "Well, we didn't try it." But I think the reality is that that this kind of peaceful protest only works against an empire or against a leader that has a certain set of values and a certain set of moral standards.
I'm going to throw this in too, and a free press. Like, Gandhi was a hero because people knew about Gandhi. Britain allowed that to go on, and to compare it with Russia, to go back to your point, Russia would not have allowed any photos or videos or communications to go out from that. He would be dead.
I mean, making him a martyr would require mass communication, and when you can censor governmental communications, that becomes far more difficult. So I am not a fan of war. I absolutely think, thou shalt not kill. It's really interesting to cite that, because the original Hebrew is not thou shalt not kill, it's thou shalt not murder. And killing and murdering are two different things. Well, not necessarily two different things, because when you murder somebody, you kill them. But murder is a word that includes intent. We prosecute car accidents where somebody has died differently than we prosecute murder. If I run a red light, because I had a friend where this actually happened. She was driving on a foggy night, and someone else had run a red light. She hadn't run the red light. Someone else had run a red light and gotten into the intersection. She was going in on a green light. She hit the car. The person in the other car died. And so you can make the case, well, she killed this person because she did. It was her car moving into that, but her intent was not to kill this other person. And she was not prosecuted for anything. The other person actually had made the mistake that resulted in the death. So it's not killing so much as the intent behind killing. And so if you look in the Old Testament, if you're going to use the Bible, you can see all kinds of places where Israel goes to war, sometimes I think unjustifiably, but many times justifiably, in order to be able to defend their rights, in order to be able to defend their freedom. Sometimes there isn't another option. Now, sometimes there is. I think Gandhi shows, I think Martin Luther King shows that peaceful resistance can have an effect. But you need to be in a place like the United States rather than a place like the Soviet Union for that to be able to work. I think there are limits to this approach.
Yeah, I guess my bottom line is the goal should be to have a way to find out concisely and quantitatively what everyone in a country wants. Because-
And I agree with that. That's a fantastic, and the goal that everybody should work towards.
And if you can know that reliably, whether there's a free press or not, what everyone is thinking, and especially even if, like that's been always my desire, is to go into North Korea and airdrop networkable cell phones where everyone in Korea gets a free cell phone where they can all canonize their will and they all build consensus around, do we want Kim Jong-un to be our leader? That's the way you peacefully free North Korea from its horrible mess. And there's a
It's
lot of
interesting you would cite that right now, because there was an article that came out just a couple of days ago about a North Korean cell phone that was smuggled out of North Korea. And it was amazing the amount of censorship that had been hardwired into the North Korean cell phone. Like you couldn't, I'm going to try to call that up, but there were certain words that you couldn't spell because they were considered subversive. There's a word that I think the word is oppa, that means older brother, but it's also South Korean slang. And the North Korean cell phone, okay, I just pulled it up. Smartphone smuggled out of North Korea reveals the insane things Kim Jong-un does to control his suffocated people. And you go through this, and it talks about just the ways that you're not allowed to communicate. Okay, this article, darn it, doesn't give you the specific examples. But the details, so Brent, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think if a tool like Canonizer could have widespread adoption under an authoritarian regime, it would be impossible for the authoritarian regime to survive. And that's why the authoritarian regime goes so far out of its way to stifle free expression and to stifle the kind of consensus building that Canonizer could do. I just pulled up another article. The South Korean word oppa, which literally means big brother, but as used as a slang term for boyfriend, is automatically replaced by the word for comrade. After replacing the word, the phone issues a big brother style warning to the user saying this word can only be used to describe your siblings. So just the amount of control that's there is just so astonishing that you have to dismantle that. You have to be able to have something like Canonizer thrive, to be able to fight this kind of authoritarianism.
Yeah, that's my vision of the future. Is because if you listen to Putin, he's always saying most of Ukrainians want to be part of Russia, and the illegitimate government went in and took that away, and so he's trying to liberate the Ukrainians back to Russia. And if you could know concisely, and the problem is there's no way to call his bluff, and if you could call his bluff, that would end all wars, is my belief.
Well, I think you're right, and I think that
there's a way. I think there's a pretty obvious way of calling his bluff on that. If the majority of Ukrainians wanted that, they would have surrendered.
Yeah,
that's circumstantial evidence.
Well, the United States, before the first Iraq War, said we will be greeted as liberators, and partially we were, and partially we weren't.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and it's a percentage. Yeah, it's not a clear thing. I agree that what Mark says is, there's probably a majority of people in Ukraine that want to be, but what is that majority? And I bet you there's some Eastern Ukrainians that wouldn't mind being a part of Russia, and it would be nice to know concisely and quantitatively, region by region, exactly what that was and the numbers.
Well, I would agree with that, but in the meantime, I think that this is a war that we have to fight and we have to win.
Yeah, it's definitely.
So we've gotten a new camp here from Brent that I think well represents a very different point of view. Not an expert, or Kelly, where are you guys?
I wrote yes, but I know that you wrote absolutely. I wrote yes, but like
Talk about this about a little bit.
okay, waiting for it to come up. Ukraine, like I will hit the highlights here. Ukraine has proven time and again that they are a force to be reckoned with. As you mentioned, this most recent attack that took out Russia's strategic bombing force was fantastic, and the timing, the day before scheduled peace talks, I'm sure was intended to make Putin want to get to the bargaining table a little bit more, seeing that not just he was fighting a war in Ukraine, but now it was going to be fought in Russia. But no matter how good they are, it's unlikely that Ukraine can continue to mount an effective force against Russian invaders indefinitely. Like just in 2023, a report from British intelligence said that Ukraine had 70,000 Ukrainian army deaths, which is the equivalent of the entire United Kingdom army. And the late 2025 estimates total of 1.4 million killed and wounded. 400,000 of those were Ukrainian. But as a nation in this war of attrition, Russia simply has more bodies to throw at it. They've even imported North Korean bodies to get slaughtered. So let's pretend that Russia immediately laid down their arm and retreat to pre-Obama administration internationally observed boundaries. They should do that. That is the moral and best solution to end the war. But that's not going to happen. So since Russia won't retreat, what should the world do? We should continue to provide weapons to Ukraine, sure. But what happens when there are no more fighters in Ukraine? Do we now send troops? Does America put troops in Ukraine? Does the rest of Europe put troops in Ukraine? Like that's what happens at some point in your absolutely do everything we can to help Ukraine. So there's a limit, I believe, to what help we can do. I believe that Russia should leave. I believe that Russia should be defeated. I believe that Russia should be, this is not going to be popular with Brent, but humiliated. But I don't see that happening without foreign troops, American troops, NATO troops on the ground fighting Russia. So that's my limit to we should do everything we can to help Ukraine, but that.
I heard one YouTube video claim that NATO's on board with making Ukraine a member, which would mean that would put NATO troops on Ukrainian soil, right?
I mean, that's kind of conditional upon the war ending, though.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is seriously considering making Ukraine a part of NATO during the war here, because that would be essentially a commitment to do all the things Kelly described in terms of putting troops on the ground.
And that was a promise that President Obama made, that he would make Ukraine part of NATO and defend them. That was after Russia invaded, and that just kind of went away.
I'm hearing a really interesting, weird little sounds like someone sucking on a straw, and it's gone away. Just by
I am strawless.
Okay.
Is it that?
Anyway, no, Kelly, and your point is well taken. I mean, did you hear that?
Yeah, I can hear it.
What is that? I don't
know.
All right, doesn't matter. Your point is well taken in that I absolutely believe. I mean, when I say absolutely, I realize that, yeah, World War III could be around the corner in this. That's the direction we could go. At the same time, I think back and I go, okay, well, what would have happened if yes, but were the American policy during World War II? Was there a cost too high to prevent the world from the Axis powers taking over Europe and taking over Asia? And essentially, eventually, I mean, had Hitler been allowed to keep all of his territory and had somehow been able to take over Russia, the hegemony that would have existed as a result of that would have been a serious threat to the United States long term. I don't know how long the United States would have been able to survive in that. I mean, it's all hypothetical. But the point is, we decided during World War II that what was at stake was too great to say yes, but. We were all in. And we were all in to the point where we mortgaged the country in deeper debt than we had ever been and have ever been since until now. That's another discussion. But as in terms of percentage of GDP, that's the kind of debt we had. But we decided that there was no cost too great, that it was too important to do this. And is Ukraine along the same lines? Well, you have to ask the question, is Putin as dangerous as Hitler was, as much a threat to international stability as Hitler was? And I think he probably is. I mean, I think long term, the kind of appeasement that Donald Trump keeps talking about, as he's like, oh, yeah, we're just going to make peace, we're just going to be friends, and we're just going to hand over stuff to Russia. I think long term, all that does is embolden authoritarianism. I think it's Neville Chamberlain type stuff. I think that if we say, yes, but, okay, you can have this much Russia, okay, Hitler, you can have Poland, but nothing else. I just long term, that is a recipe for disaster. And I think it also sets a precedent where China is eyeing Taiwan. And if China were to take over Taiwan and invade Taiwan, as they very much want to do, we've talked about how much are we willing to defend there? What's the yes, but for that? I think long term, the price of defending Ukraine against Russian aggression is a price that we have to pay, because long term the cost will be too great if we say, okay, a certain amount of fascism is acceptable, a certain amount of totalitarian, anti-democratic expansion is acceptable. I just think that this is a war we have to fight.
I'm going to acknowledge everything you said, but where do we draw the line? Right now, the Council of Foreign Relations are tracking 28 armed conflicts around the world. Some that are having many more deaths than are happening in Ukraine. So where do we draw the line of which ones we step into? Do we step into Myanmar? Do we send troops to Israel? Do we send troops to Africa to help the insurgency against Boko Haram? Do we go to help in the Sudanese conflict? Do we help the Ethiopian civil war? Like there's all sorts of things going on in the world right now where there's obvious good versus evil, right versus wrong, democracy versus authoritarianism. And at some point we've got to say which ones are most important to American interests.
And the answer is the ones that prevent totalitarians who have the possibility of threatening America, prevent them from prevailing. I mean, if you want to intervene in an Ethiopian civil war, you can do so for humanitarian reasons to stop bloodshed. But the likelihood of Ethiopia ever presenting a threat to the United States long term is next to nothing. The likelihood of an emboldened Russia going after all of the Soviet satellite countries is, I think, extraordinarily high. If Putin gets Ukraine, then Putin says, okay, well, then I'm going after I'm going after Romania. I'm going after all of the people that used to be behind the Iron Curtain, that used to be under Soviet control. I'm rebuilding the Soviet empire. That is a very real threat long term, not just to American stability, but to pull Brent back into here, but to worldwide stability.
Sure.
The idea that Putin becomes the head honcho of the world is terrifying. The idea of Myanmar becoming the head honcho of the world is ridiculous. It's not going to happen. So yes, there are all kinds of places where we could intervene to save human life, and I think that there's value in doing that. At the same time, I don't think any of those conflicts reflect the kind of world destabilizing threat that Russia does. So that's how I would answer that.
And I'm going to counter with that's true, but right now Pakistan, India are
Pakistan, India is a big
exchanging
one,
wars,
yeah.
and they both have nuclear weapons, and that could go nuts at any point.
Israel,
So, yeah.
Gaza is a big one. Is
Absolutely nuclear.
because Israel has nuclear weapons.
Yep.
And Iran essentially has nuclear weapons.
Yep. Yep. So anyway, and I agree with your points, but we've got to prioritize. And if you think Ukraine is the one place where we make a stand, I really can't disagree with that. But there is a limit to where we can stand, and that limit right now to me is, do we send U.S. troops? I think that the you mentioned he'll go after, you mentioned Romania specifically. Well, Romania is part of NATO, so I think once that line is crossed, then
I was going to say Georgia, but then I couldn't remember if Georgia is part of Russia still.
Yeah.
Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. Romania was part of the Warsaw Pact.
Yeah, and you could make the case for the Baltic states.
Yeah.
Like NATO is by treaty going to protect them. And like we can go on forever again, but I was reading this story just today that Senator Lindsey Graham, and I forgot the Democrat senator, are in Europe right now, and they're both convinced that Russia is not only planning a further escalation in Ukraine, but they're ready to cross the border into NATO territories, and that is like the bright red line that I'd say cross that, and Russia is now the enemy of the world.
And if you cross that, do you join my camp?
Yes.
Okay.
But right now I'm let's protect Ukraine up to a point, and that point is sending U.S. troops.
Okay. But the minute that they cross into NATO territory, you're okay with sending U.S. troops?
Yep.
Okay. All
I
right.
mean, he should be. We're bound by treaty.
Well, I think that's a morally defensible position, even if I don't fully agree with it. So I think we've seen where the consensus is here, and we ask
over an hour or two.
That's all right. We'll wind this up. Ask all of you who are watching, please go and join the camp that best reflects your point of view. If there isn't a camp that reflects your point of view, please make one of your own. And until then, we will see you next time on Consensus with Canonizer. Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye.
Light.